The last couple of episodes were interviews with the daughter formerly known as Madison and Rachel's husband, Mark. For a point of reference, those interviews were recorded over the summer of 2024. The audio version of this episode that you're watching now was recorded in February of 2025. There was information that we talked about in those interviews which would need clarification, and that clarification would come in the months that follow. And as a matter of fact, at the time of the recording, it was still coming in. Rachel did, in fact, run away and marry someone. The details weren't as clear as they are right now. Within the last month of recording this episode, the audio version for the podcast, we found Brian in Flint. And here's how it happened. In January, when season 1 was done, I received some paperwork in the way of a marriage application and a marriage certificate with Rachel's name on it, her full name, her date of birth. The address tied out to an address she had in Houston. It was her. We went to work. We sent someone to the courthouse in Flint to get both documents. The evidence we found was indeed damning. It proved bigamy, without a shadow of a doubt. Now, Brian has a common last name. Eventually, we got to him, and he responded. He was willing to have a phone conversation with me. He was very forthcoming. I was most curious how Brian ties out to Rachel's story. And as it turns out, Bobby brought Rachel into the bar that Brian was working in 2003. Rachel had gone to Flint to see Bobby. Bobby and Brian had sons that played hockey together. Roughly 4 months after Rachel married Mark, she took off to have that weekend with Bobby. Bobby was still married to Rebecca at that point in time. Shortly after that visit, Bobby ended his relationship with Rachel. At the time, she and Mark were working at the Silver Rain strip club in LA, and she would periodically disappear, as you heard from Mark during the interview. Rachel apparently didn't take the breakup with Bobby very well. She grabbed a girlfriend and headed back to Flint to see if she could strike up a little something with Brian this time. Perhaps an act of revenge. She introduced her girlfriend that she brought with her to Brian as a realtor. Rachel was pretending to be a college student at the time, finishing her undergraduate degree and getting ready for law school at UCLA. Imagine that, another lie about college. And the ultimate lie was yet to come. Rachel's plan worked. She was beautiful. At the time, she was charming. She was a pro. She worked Brian, and by January 26th, the marriage certificate had been filled out. And Rachel lied. She indicated she had never been married before, and certainly didn't tell the court that she was married at the time. The devil, as they say, is in the details. They picked out a spot, a place called Noah's Ark, and a date, February 3rd, 2004, just 9 months into her second marriage with Mark. The couple, they pulled the trigger, and just like that, our future felon becomes a bigamist. In Michigan, bigamy is a felony. In Nevada, it's also a felony. She could have been charged in either state. California, where she was living, they couldn't do anything. It's up to the state where the bigamy occurs. No one did anything, as it would turn out, and this story gets so much worse. Rachel and Brian spent about a month together after they married, after that 30-day or so courtship. After that month, Rachel claimed she had to head back to LA to start law school at UCLA. Brian went to see her a couple times in Los Angeles. He was sequestered, if you'll excuse the term, in a motel. She couldn't bring him into her house. That would have been a place where he wasn't welcome. Her husband Mark wouldn't appreciate that, I'm sure. Another month went by. Brian and Rachel connected in Flint this time. Mark began to worry about Rachel. She had disappeared. Meantime, Rachel was telling Brian that the reason she had disappeared is because her ex-boyfriend had kidnapped her and held her hostage. And then at some point during that visit or another visit, Rachel's phone rang repeatedly while Rachel was in the shower, and Brian answered the phone. Brian was greeted with, "Where's Rachel?" Brian said, "Well, she's in the shower." Mark said, "Who's this?" Brian said, "I'm her husband." And Mark says, "I'm her husband." No one ever wins that argument, ever. Anyway, the jig was up, as they say. And it took Brian 3 years to get divorced from Rachel. Finally, after avoiding service, realizing that she wasn't going to respond to any of the paperwork he sent, the decree of divorce was granted by a judge in Flint. Now, there's another part of Rachel's act that you need to be aware of. Rachel isn't just a liar. Rachel is also a thief. Rachel has a history of liberating money that's not hers for her own use. That's something that started just after high school, as it would turn out. Rachel painted herself as someone of exceptional intelligence. There's no doubt about that. Not just to me, but to others. A classic Rachel move. Her post-high school career, fresh out of summer school, because, of course, she couldn't quite manage to graduate on time, and that forced her to summer school to graduate, to get a diploma. She didn't get to walk with her class. By the way, she told her family she had been accepted after all that to Rice University. Rice is in Houston, and Rachel grew up in the Mauriceville and Beaumont area. She needed a way to get herself to Houston. And this is where she convinced boyfriend Brad to make that move. Rachel's family thought she was at Rice, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, when they arrived in Houston, Brad found work immediately, thinking he was supporting Rachel and his future family, the twins. She didn't enroll at Rice, though. No, she wouldn't have gotten accepted there. She took her life in a different direction. She took a different path at that point. Instead of hitting the books, Rachel was hitting the clubs. Rachel became an entrepreneur. She wasn't just stripping. She decided to model in men's magazines and get a little side hustle, and began to work as an escort. She also appeared at that time in the Miss Teen Texas USA pageant, which is crazy. Eva Longoria competed that year. A friend of mine found it on YouTube. It's out there. Now, I'm not sure, but I'd be willing to bet that the Miss Teen Texas and the Miss Texas USA pageants may have something called a code of conduct that prohibits contestants from stripping or posing nude in men's magazines, any of those things. The story only gets worse from there, if you can imagine that. Let me first say that I have no issue with dancing. It's a legal way to make a living. Many people do it. They do it as a way to supplement their income or just to make an income. The problem with stripping is not a problem. But in this way, it was a gateway for Rachel to a career that's not okay. It was at this point that Rachel joined an agency just after meeting a client at the strip joint in Houston. That client convinced Rachel and a girlfriend of hers by the name of Germaine to become escorts, call girls, prostitutes. They call it the oldest profession, right? Rachel got a taste of the good life. She was earning extra money, a lot of money for a little bit of work, an hour at a time. The problem here is that it created a conundrum of sorts for Rachel. This conundrum with Rachel is that she got used to the fast life, having cash. She went out and bought goods on a bad check. She stole. She was arrested. The arrest happened in 1998, the year after Rachel graduated high school, after completing summer school. It was a year after she scammed Brad into moving to Houston and pretending she was pregnant with his twins. And it was a year before she would compete Now, again, I haven't done the research. I don't know, but I would imagine that the Miss Texas USA pageant also has an issue, or would have an issue, with Rachel working as an escort and being charged with theft by hot check. All those probably violations of the code of conduct. They would likely not have taken kindly to any of what Rachel was up to. But this was before Google was Google, and people didn't do a lot of extensive digging. Rachel slid right through yet again and under the radar. By the way, the arrest and charge of passing a bad check, that worked out for Rachel. Those charges were dismissed. Her first offense, I suppose, and no other criminal history. Now, Rachel's not just a master of reinvention. She's a black belt in betrayal. From the fake marriages and fake divorces, she's played every role imaginable. Lawyer, check. Nurse, check. Victim to everything, double check. And it doesn't end there. Our future felon once had political ambitions as well. You see, in 2007, she ran for the water board in the Santa Clarita Valley, where she and Mark were living. I remember seeing an actual picture that she used in her campaign, wearing an Oxford-type shirt, dressed for success, wearing a hard hat as well. Little did I know what plans were actually in her hands and in her mind. Behind that polished image and behind the scenes, Rachel wasn't exactly a pillar of integrity during that election. This wasn't your typical grassroots political campaign. No, this was another Rachel scam. She ran for office between having babies and doing good deeds, like working as a volunteer for the Special Olympics. Her campaign for the water district was after her affair with a man she met that allegedly fathered a child with her in 2007. That's what Rachel does. What Rachel didn't end up doing was helping the fine citizens of the Santa Clarita Valley in any way. What she did was commit numerous campaign violations and embezzle campaign funds. She wasn't elected to the water board. She lost that campaign. But what she didn't lose was her way to the bank. And this is where our future felon ran into some trouble with the law yet again, with the voters of Santa Clarita, when they said no thanks at the ballot box. Rachel was busy withdrawing campaign funds for her own personal use. And let me be crystal clear, she swindled money. No matter what she did, she swindled money from the very people that donated to her campaign. Hard-earned dollars from residents who believed in her message. They trusted her promises. They wanted to see her make a difference in their future. Instead of returning the money, she took the money for herself. She didn't return it. She treated it as her own piggy bank. According to a document that I have in my possession, and I've posted on her social media, Rachel still owes the Fair Political Practices Commission money on that campaign. She never paid it back. And honestly, I don't think she ever will. I mean, why would she? Accountability doesn't fit into the Rachel plan anywhere. Running for public office isn't easy. It takes time. It takes money. It takes scrutiny. Most people do it because they want to make a difference. They want to serve their community, but not Rachel. Rachel ran because she saw an opportunity to gain power and attention. And that didn't work out. She saw another opportunity to take some money from the people that believed in her. And she did it without hesitation, without remorse, just like she always does. This is a pattern with Rachel. Our girl, she takes on different personas. Student, lawyer, pilot, nurse, cancer survivor, political candidate, all for one reason: to get what she wants, which is attention. Rachel is, if nothing else, charming and believable. You want to believe her and believe in her. You want to like her. Those years of being in pageants, grooming process, the finishing programs, the polishing, everything that goes into it. She took all of that knowledge, which could have helped her, and she used it for malevolent reasons. Not just with the embezzlement story, but way back in high school, a dozen years before this. She doesn't care about the truth because she thinks she can just talk things into existence. She doesn't care about the people she hurts. She only cares about Rachel. And when she gets caught, she deflects. She blames others. She never takes accountability. To this day, that money is still owed to the people of California because Rachel doesn't clean up her messes. She just moves on to the next con. I want to read you a quote from someone who found me on social media. One of the residents of the Santa Clarita Valley that donated to Rachel's campaign. He said to me, "I thought we were contributing to someone who cared about our water resources. I was charmed by her. I couldn't believe when someone told me about your story. This is the same woman that stole from us. She did this to you." "It's unbelievable," he said. "I thought I was helping elect someone who might make a difference. Instead, I was scammed by a liar who took all of our money and ran." And right there, that's an example of the impact of Rachel's lies. It's not just about the money. It's about betrayal of trust. She didn't just steal campaign funds or do the wrong thing with the election. She robbed people of their faith that they had in her. She stripped people of hope. Her act is an accomplished one. She is the queen of pretend. It's not just another chapter in the Rachel playbook of lies and manipulation. It's more than that. It makes you wonder if she was willing to steal from her community, people that she saw at the grocery store, at town meetings, at events. What wouldn't she do? One of the followers in social media, frequent commenter, wrote to me after a post I put up about this, and she said, "Rachel reminds me of that Black Crow song, She Talks to Angels. There's a line in that song that says, she'll tell you she's an orphan after you've met her family." And, I laughed. Rachel will tell you she's misunderstood, that everyone's out to get her. They're all lies. People spread lies. They've been doing it her whole life. But the truth is she's just a liar. She's just a manipulator, a thief, not just a thief of cash and common goods, campaign funds. But she's a thief of hearts. She never counted on this, though. She never thought her lies would be exposed. She never thought that the world would learn the truth. She never thought I would ever turn on her. But here we are, and we're just getting started. How about another story about Rachel taking money that's not hers, where she was accused of fraud? When Rachel and I reconnected in 2012, after the exchange of pleasantries and platitudes, at one point she said, "What are you looking for?" And on one hand, it seemed like an easy question to answer. I guess I was looking for happiness. I couldn't really define it beyond that. She began sharing these stories, horrible stories, episodes with Mark about her cancer, about financial struggles. And from time to time, I'd give her some money for a phone bill, a utility bill. I've shared this with you in previous episodes. I never gave her much. I thought I'd provide her a little something here and there to help make sure things kept moving. She told me that she was done with Mark and she was filing for divorce. Her financial situation with 4 kids wasn't good. Mark was refusing to pay any support, and she was on her own, working in Morro Bay at at the Wells Fargo Bank there. I began to do some research into options. I believed that there were resources that were out there for her in the situation. By the way, as I understood it from her, Mark didn't want to accept a divorce either. He would just show up at the house periodically, unannounced. And he was drunk, out of control, acting out of control. She would say he seems to be on something. The stories, they were horrific. One particular story stuck with me. Mark got into the house, threw Rachel to the ground, exposed her, pulled her top up, burned one of her breasts with a lighter he had on him. At one point he put his hands in her shorts just to show her he was in control and could do whatever he wanted. It was infuriating to me. She claimed she would sleep locked in a bathroom on the floor. As I found resources and organizations, she would come back to me and tell me that she struck out. No one wanted to help. No one wanted to provide any resources. But what I would find out after the first season of this podcast had been produced, there was an organization that would help her called CAPSLO, the Community Action Partnership of San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara. They gave Rachel benefits totaling over $27,000. And at one point, after that money had been given out, she was exposed. Yet again, Rachel was accused by CAPSLO of fraud. They found out that she lied about her situation. Rachel was not, in fact, divorced from Mark, not in 2012, and not ever. She and Mark were still married. Mark was running his business, and she was a bank teller. A bank teller that wanted more of the good life she experienced when she was working in LA and in Houston as an escort. And at the time, she was writing bad checks too, right? Rachel had committed fraud. They were on to her. They wanted their money back. They knew she wasn't divorced. They knew she wasn't living without another parent in the home. The address she gave them was fake. She even misspelled her name. She never paid. They hired an attorney. They sued her. I found the original demand. They were looking for $27,000 and another $4,000 for costs. And then at one point I found an abstract of judgment after she was sued, and they won. As of 2021, she owed them $41,000 and some change. And it only gets worse. As of the spring of 2024, Rachel owes them $82,000 on that debt. Isn't that crazy? Now, in season 1, you heard about Bobby several times. She said that she was married to Bobby around 2015. She painted it as a fact, a significant chapter in her convoluted story that supposedly started after her divorce from Mark in 2012. And when I began to dig into Bobby, a bunch of things, they didn't add up. I couldn't find any record of him. His last name is a very common one. Remember that Rachel told me that Bobby and his family were from Paso. Rachel told me that Bobby's father, Robert Sr., was an attorney. Rachel indicated that she was able to do what amounted to an apprenticeship under Robert Sr. And after completing law school through online classes, which is allowed in California, she worked under Robert Sr. at this firm. She worked for several years before moving on, she would claim to me. According to Rachel, Bobby didn't follow in his dad's footsteps. He worked in the wine business, which is big business in Paso Robles. She painted Bobby as a great man at the beginning. And over time, she would share the truth. Well, her truth about Bobby. She would claim that Bobby was a sex addict. He continuously watched porn and demanded sex from Rachel. According to her, he pushed to have sex with Bobby and one other friend. friend named Greg. She claims that as Bobby became distant from her, she grew frustrated. All of that happened after they had that threesome with Greg. And the way she closed out the chapter with Bobby was that she called me back in 2016, out of the blue. She said she received a call from a woman claiming to be Bobby's girlfriend. And that girlfriend was telling Rachel that she was to expect Bobby to leave because she was pregnant with Bobby's baby. Apparently, Bobby had a whole different life going on. Rachel claims she packed up immediately, found a new place to live. This girlfriend and Bobby would call Rachel repeatedly, demanding that Rachel sign the divorce paperwork. This was all a crushing blow to Rachel, who thought she met and married her Prince Charming. She claimed that every man in her life cheated on her. She claimed they all did, Brad, Todd, Mark, and others. She made a big deal of this with me during my turn in the barrel. She said repeatedly to me, I don't ever want to be the other woman. I just don't. I know what that feels like. She didn't need to worry about that with me. And little did I know that it wasn't her that needed to be worried about that. It was me. Her game, her specialty, her expertise was cheating on men and then pretending to be the victim. With Bobby and that story, she claims that Bobby's father exploded on Bobby after Bobby was exposed. He was devastated that Bobby ruined his marriage to Rachel. And he not only cheated on Rachel, but Rachel's girls and Bobby's entire family as well, as far as the father was concerned. Rachel said that Bobby's father actually handled the divorce, and Rachel was paid a hefty settlement out of Bobby's trust. Rachel would go on to continue to work for Bobby's father at his law firm, Robert Sr., and continued to have a relationship with Robert Sr. and his wife, Rebecca, Bobby's mother. I want you to remember that name, Rebecca. Now, at first glance, this would seem to fit the narrative with Rachel that she was setting me up for. But as most things with her, what I would come to find out was Bobby was actually a real person. He was not made up. What you didn't hear in episode 7 last year, because I didn't know it at the time, is that Rachel's entire story with him unraveled in a simple phone call to Bobby himself. I discussed all of this with him, including Rachel's claims. He didn't just deny it. He flat out laughed at the idea. He said, "Married to Rachel?" He said, "I'm in disbelief." The disbelief in his voice was palpable. He went on to tell me in no uncertain terms that he never was romantically involved with Rachel at any point in his life. "She's crazy," he said, brushing her off as if she were just another name on a long list of unwanted admirers. He even referred to her at one point as a stalker, someone who latched on to him for reasons that he couldn't explain, and that she wouldn't let go. Rachel, as it turns out, was infatuated with Bobby, who was actually a professional athlete playing hockey in Houston during that time. According to Bobby, she was just a fangirl. Now, at first, I wanted to believe him. After all, I'd been tangled up in Rachel's lies for so long, and long enough to know that nothing she said could be taken at face value. But then I found something interesting that Bobby couldn't explain away. That is a photograph. The photograph you're looking at right now. The picture is one of Bobby and Rachel looking very involved and very happy. It's an old picture from around 2000, 2001. In it, here's Bobby clear as day. And next to him, Rachel. They're not standing apart. They're not standing at some random event in public. It's some hockey-related event. They look comfortable and familiar, I suppose, is probably a good way to put it. This isn't a stalker standing next to her unwilling target. These are two people that know each other, that share time and space. So why was Bobby so quick to deny it and continue to deny it? A photo to me is irrefutable evidence that something happened between them, whether Bobby wants to admit it or not. It's a tangible piece of proof in a story that up till now has been built almost entirely on Rachel's words. Words that are notoriously unreliable. This wasn't just a passing encounter. They knew each other. They were close. Bobby wanted to keep this buried. At one point, Rachel sent me a picture of Bobby's father that she claims that she took. I sent it to Bobby. I thought, this got to be a fake. Rachel and Bobby were never involved. His response was, holy shit, that's my dad. And I found a picture of Bobby's mom. Her name is not Rebecca, as it turns out. Rebecca is the name of the woman Bobby was married to when Rachel and Bobby were together. After I found the picture of he and Rachel, the one I just showed you, I sent it to him. I said, I need to talk to you about this. I never heard from Bobby again. Bobby did tell me that his mom and his dad were still alive. Rachel killed all three of them off. Bobby to a drug overdose, his dad to COVID, and his mom to cancer. They're all still alive. That's the thing about digging into people's past. It's one of those things you always find more than anyone wants you to find out. If you think back to the story I told you about Rachel, claiming that her youngest daughter had attempted self-harm during that week in Thanksgiving in 2021. I told you about that in episode 2 last season. When we were due to see each other, she claims that on Thanksgiving, on that day, she and her daughter were in the hospital. But Bobby's parents were actually watching the other 3 girls, who were all minors at the time. She claimed that the relationship with Bobby's family was still really important to her and the girls. This history of deception, it stretches back decades at this point, all the way back into her teen years. In fact, her tendency to lie and cheat has been a rather constant theme through her entire life, from her first serious relationships to her marriages. Take her alleged divorce from Mark in 2012, for example. According to Rachel, that divorce marked a turning point in her life. She spun it as a fresh start, a new chapter. But like everything else in Rachel's story, the truth is murkier than she'd have you believe. Mark's mother, Rachel's own mother-in-law, caught Rachel cheating. There were other whispers of infidelity as well, rumors that Rachel had cheated on Mark. They weren't just whispers. They'd followed her around. They were impossible to ignore, the cheating, the lying, all of it. It started early in life and it never stopped. Even now, as I'm piecing fragments of her life together, the lies, they just keep coming. So many pieces, so many of them seeming to be missing at the moment. I know that they're here somewhere. Got to be in the big box of puzzle pieces. It's coming together. It's just slow. It's a lot of work. Rachel's web of lies and deceit. It's so much. Every time I uncover a new lie, it brings me closer to the truth. The real question is now, what else is she hiding? How far is she and was she willing to go to keep her secrets buried? I think we're only scratching the surface. At one point, her coworkers at American, one of them said to me, with everything that you know about Rachel and what you're finding out, can you imagine what you don't know? Maybe it's all like the duck above water or the iceberg above water, the top half below. It's even bigger. I don't know. It made me kind of sick. Anyway, coming up on the next episode of the Rachel Cancer Scam, it was always you. A line that Rachel used with me a lot, often, And we'll talk about the origins of that and much more on the next episode of The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam.